Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most credible voice in true crime. So this episode is going to be a fine-tuning of the speculation that we went through in the previous episode. So you may remember in the previous episode I mentioned something about throwing the suitcase off the side of the bridge and it landing on flotsam, right? Now, somebody brought to my attention, and thank you very much, Josie, for letting me know, that there are some very clear photos from WEAR TV, I believe. And it was actually published on March the 17th, a Tuesday. So I'll put a link to that article in the description, but you can see from the images exactly what is going on there. And what you can see is it looks like crime scene tape, right? So it looks like on that sort of rubble of rocks on the side, the gap between the two highways, and this is before the bridge actually starts. It looks like a horizontal line of crime scene tape, and then also a sort of a line that is going sort of up at an angle. So logic would suggest that this is where the body was actually found, or in this area. So one can kind of imagine that the police would step over that guardrail and then sort of go down, maybe not a very long way, but sort of go down under the beginning of the bridge to wherever it was. Now, some people have said that this means that Gannon wasn't thrown into the water or something like that, or wasn't thrown into the river. I'm not sure if that's true. It could be true, especially if you look at the incredible length of this bridge and the river and the highway. It's sort of quite a long way to go to get to the river. The other thing is also that there's quite a large sort of marshy area that, when the river floods, it also goes up there. So we don't know what the conditions were like in February, but it's hard to imagine that the water level would have been certainly that high to where these rocks are, right? It also may be that this is the route that the authorities took to get to the body. So in other words, that's the way that they would be going. They may also have found something else there. So I'll tell you what, how I've kind of changed my thinking since the last video. I still think it's possible that the flotsam was sort of right below the bridge. And so if that was the idea, if the idea was to dispose of the body in the river, like immediately next to the road, then maybe on their way to Pace, they saw that wasn't going to be possible, right? Because the road that they're on is actually coming back from Pace before you even get to the river. So this suggests, first of all, that they'd already crossed the river, or she had already crossed the river, or someone had already crossed the river, and realized that that wasn't a very good spot. There are quite a few reasons why it may not have been. One could have been boats on the river, people fishing alongside the river. There are a few little communities hanging around there. Maybe that spot was identified on a map beforehand, and when they got there, or she got there, it was found to be not as ideal as it seemed, right? So it's hard to know exactly what is going on here, but what does seem possible is on the way back from Pace, the idea then was to use this area by the bridge, just as the bridge starts, where you can kind of imagine no one would really walk. I mean, why on earth would anybody walk in this area? No one would have imagined a road crew. You wouldn't visualize a road crew sort of hanging around, walking up the road kind of thing. So this is kind of an area where you wouldn't really expect people to be wandering around. They might be in the river, boats and fishing and so on, but there would be no reason to come up to this sort of rubble area, right? Another possibility is that whoever was carrying the suitcase wanted to go to the river, but it was just too far. It was just too far and too risky to carry something that far. And so a different spot was chosen, which is sort of under this bridge. The press reports do state that it's near a bridge, but basically it looks like it is. If you want to be technical, you could say the bridge is only the part that is going over water. So where it starts ascending and where there are those struts, that's not the bridge yet. I would argue that it sort of is. I would argue that on the other hand, you could say, well, the one highway hasn't started elevating yet. So anyway, I'm just saying that there is a bit of a little bit of confusion about, was it below a bridge or was it before the bridge or whatever. Something else I want to draw your attention to is, if you look onto the right hand side of that highway, there is a kind of a side road and kind of an area where someone could park. Now, I don't know whether someone would have parked on that side and then run across, but there certainly is a lot more space on that side to park. On the left side, you'd be somewhat shielded from view, including from people coming, in the opposite direction, but it's really limited view. It's really, for someone to choose this particular spot where a car could be coming at any moment, it's really not the best strategy. In terms of what I was saying about what would have alerted a road worker, it does seem as if the suitcase or the remains were sort of thrown into those bushes that are over there, just by the side of the road. Almost, it looks like it could be almost the same distance from the roadside as where Kaylee Anthony's remains were found. Kind of a couple of feet off the road, off the verge, but really not really that far, and certainly something that someone passing by on foot might see or come across or smell in this case. So it does look as though the intention was to dump the body in the river or in water, which would have transported it kind of into a bay. If you zoom out and you sort of look at a map of Pace and Pensacola, you basically, this is kind of the point where the river flows out into a bay. It's called Escambia Bay, and then from there into Pensacola Bay, and from there into the Gulf of Mexico. So the idea of putting it in the water or in the river is that it is going to go out to sea, I guess. Somebody also complained or pointed out that there are no crocodiles in Florida. Well, they were almost extinct at some point, but Florida is one of the only areas in America, I think it is the only area in America where you get indigenous saltwater crocodiles. They're native to the area. Not many, but there certainly are those. And of course there are alligators as well. I do kind of get the impression that this was a foiled disposal, if that makes sense. In other words, there was an intention to do something and someone ended up doing it doing kind of a rush job and kind of didn't dispose of it. The disposal wasn't as easy or straightforward as what they thought it would be, and of course, they, as I said, they didn't anticipate someone coming by that spot on foot. So thanks again to Josie for that heads up on those images. Thanks very much for that. And I'll be continuing to provide updates as information unfolds. Wherever you are in the world, take care, look after yourself, stay home if you can, and I'll see you guys next time.